LiberalViewer presents.
So those who watched my LiberalViewer Sunday Clip Roundup last weekend saw multiple Republicans try to justify the recently disclosed NSA spying program that collects the phone bill records, although not the content of every phone call every American makes every day, and the justification these Republicans used was that this NSA spying program could have prevented the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on the United States, as you can see beginning with the argument of Republican House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Rogers, who seemed to inadvertently say after 9/11 when he meant before 9/11 at the beginning of this clip.
After 9/11, our intelligence services knew about a guy who's a pretty bad guy that we believed was going to be involved in some type of attempt in the United States to commit an act of violence, a terrorist, who was living in San Diego. But because we couldn't find the nexus, we were not allowed to find out if somebody from overseas was calling in to the United States to talk to him. We couldn't get that piece. We missed it. He got on a plane and flew it in to the Pentagon shortly thereafter.
And I'm sure it's not a coincidence that that same morning on a different network, Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss was using the same talking point to justify NSA spying, even specifically mentioning Section 215 of the Patriot Act used to authorize bulk phone record collection, as you can see here.
If we'd have had this program pre-9/11, we now know that there's a good chance we would have intercepted the phone calls between one of the 9/11 hijackers in San Diego, al-Midhar, and a safe house that he was calling in Yemen. And we were monitoring the safe house, but we weren't monitoring calls coming out of the United States. Section 215 would have picked those phone calls up. Who knows what might have not have happened on 9/11 if that had been the case.
Now, despite these two Republicans using the identical talking point to justify NSA spying, there's actually a split in the Republican Party on this issue, which is what led Republican Governor of New Jersey Chris Christie earlier last week to criticize libertarians wanting to limit government anti-terrorism programs, including criticizing Republican Senator Rand Paul specifically, using again the September 11th talking point that you can see in this clip.
As the governor now of a state that lost the second most people on 9/11 behind the state of New York, and still seeing those families, John. I love all these esoteric debates that people are getting in.
Senator Rand Paul, for example?
Well, listen, you can name any number of people who've engaged in it, and he's one of them. I mean, these esoteric, intellectual debates, I want them to come to New Jersey and sit across from the widows and the orphans and have that conversation. And they won't. Because that's a much tougher conversation to have.
So having read the 9/11 Commission report several years ago, I'm pretty skeptical of this frequent use of the September 11th attacks to justify NSA spying, and especially this coordinated use of the example of the 9/11 hijacker who lived in San Diego, Khalid al-Midhar, and the claim that this NSA spying program would have been key to intercepting his phone calls with the safe house in Yemen. And a little research revealed a great ProPublica fact-checked article from last month with over a dozen good supporting links showing this claim was originally made by then-President George W. Bush back in December 2005, and it was debunked back then because not only did U.S. officials have plenty of information about Khalid al-Midhar if they just put it together, they also could have easily intercepted the calls with the safe house in Yemen using an old-fashioned warrant from a court. As former U.S. anti-terrorism czar Richard Clarke was quoted as saying in the ProPublica article, quote, "Justice could have asked the FISA court for a warrant to all phone companies to show all calls from the U.S. which went to the Yemen number. As far as I know, they did not do so. They could have. My understanding is they did not need the current all calls database FISA warrant to get the information they needed. Since they had one end of the calls, the Yemen number, all they had to do was ask for any call connecting to it," unquote. So this recently resurrected Republican talking point raising the specter of 9/11 to justify NSA spying turns out to have been first debunked almost a decade ago, yet it may be resurfacing now because just last Friday, a Democratic foe of this NSA spying, Oregon Senator Ron Wyden, released a letter he received from Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, specifically answering Senator Wyden's request for examples of terrorist attacks prevented by bulk phone record collection, and while Director Clapper gave two examples where the NSA spying program may have been useful, he gave no unclassified examples of attacks that could not have been prevented without bulk phone record collection. And that's pretty weak evidence, which may explain why some Republicans are returning to their tried-and-true strategy to distract from weak evidence while justifying increased government power, and that's scaring people with the September 11th attacks, I think. And if you agree, give this video a thumbs up, add it to your favorites, share it on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media, and post your comments because I want to know what you think. Are Republicans resurrecting this debunked story that NSA spying would have stopped the September 11th attacks to use fear to distract from lack of evidence? And on that evidence, if there really were strong evidence this bulk phone record collection program has been necessary to prevent terrorist attacks, don't you think we would have heard it by now?
YouTube, you decide.